Hello and welcome to another celebratory episode of Phil on the Mic. I, as always, am Darrin Michael, and with me, the man, the myth, the legend. You'll hardly recognize the guy with the beard and the Jets hat, which is funny that you're wearing the Jets hat because he actually just got back from firing Jason Garrett as Giants offensive coordinator. He was just in New York City. Mr. Phil Calise. Phil, how was that conversation, man? Was that tough, especially when you walked to the room and he's like, "Who the hell are you?"
Yeah, it was interesting. I did it with the Jets hat on just to confuse him a little. It's a little pre-Thanksgiving podcast here. We are less than 48 hours away from Turkey Day, which is always a
That's
fun holiday.
That is true.
Pound for pound, one of the best holidays, maybe the best.
No,
So
I
it's
can't argue with
exciting.
that.
This is always an exciting time because you get a lot of great from a sports perspective. You get a lot of great football pretty much now from Thanksgiving through Sunday, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
really
yeah.
spread out well between, if you like college football, you get a ton of it Thursday, Friday, you get it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, big games. NFL, not so great Thanksgiving Day matchups. We might get into that in a minute. Not the best Thanksgiving Day games. So what I recommend is you bet them or you have some type of rooting interest in them because the games in and of itself not the best. So, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, yeah, you could say that. You could say now you usually host your family for Thanksgiving, don't you?
I'm actually at my dad's this Thanksgiving.
Oh, you are. You are.
I
Okay. Even
mean,
though you're the biggest turkey in the family, right?
I'm the biggest turkey in the family without a doubt. Thanksgiving is I just love Thanksgiving food, so I get
Who
hyped. I'm
doesn't?
already, huh?
I said, who doesn't, man? It's like my favorite
It's
holiday.
yeah, it brings a smile to my face because it combines the things I love most: food, eating food with family and watching football. So it's like
I mean, what can be better than that, right?
we
A-
eat all day. It's ridiculous.
And the crazy thing is that's what's so great about the holiday. The expected behavior on the holiday is to stuff your face
All
and
day.
to just watch football. That's all it is. And it's
It's
isn't
like
it three
socially
games?
acceptable to do those things. So it
Oh my
makes it.
God, that's all you do all day long.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how can you argue with that? I mean, every holiday should be like that.
And to steal a page from our buddy on the famous Friends show, I'm gonna make sure I got my extra stretchy pants on. Make sure I can,
Oh,
make sure I can absorb all the food
your
coming in.
pregnancy pants, right?
Yeah,
Now, are you
exactly.
gonna put the turkey on your head
I
too
got
and
I
dance?
got the meat sweats. I got the meat sweats.
you're already, you're already starting to feel it. Preparation, your body is getting
Exactly.
prepared. So
Exactly.
we had a little bit of a Brooke celebration week, and you're gonna have to help me with this because
Nice.
I don't really understand too much. But first, we had her getting inducted into her school's beta club, which
Nice.
is like it's like you have to have certain grades and you have to have certain community service, and it's a big deal. So I was really proud of her with that. And then on Sunday or Saturday she had her confirmation, um, which I don't know a whole lot about, but I guess that signifies the end of your religious education.
Religious education?
Isn't that what confirmation is?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. That's so we had that. So we celebrated that. That was exciting. It was funny. They had me in the front row and I did not burst into flames, which was good also. But and it's great because my father-in-law is here and he was here for the confirmation. His birthday is tomorrow, and then he'll be here for Thanksgiving. So it's been like an awesome week.
I like it. That sounds awesome.
The only thing that would have made it better is if I won the lottery at the
Congrats
same
and
time. Yeah.
congrats to everyone involved.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I have to say a congrats to you. No, actually, I don't. Your picks were bad again last week. 2-2, Phil. What is going on? Man, my phone has been ringing off the hook with people. They're like, listen, we keep betting according to what he says, and we're just tired of it. They think you need to shave. They think the beard is what the problem is. The beard is clouding your judgment.
You know, what did I pick last week? Let's peruse. Let's just see. So
Let's peruse.
I was right on the Chiefs. I was right on the Steelers. So here's what I will say about my picks: two and
Yep.
two, just a
Yep.
very average, mediocre picks.
Yes.
I really got to stay away from picking against the Eagles. They have burned me a lot. I
They
don't like the
continuously,
Eagles, but
haven't they?
they're playing excellent. So for all our massive Philadelphia audience that tunes into this podcast, my deepest apologies because apparently Jalen Hurts and that Eagle team is humming along. So I've been anti-Eagle, but I'm gonna get off picking against them. I don't know if I'm gonna pick them, but I'm gonna definitely stay away from picking against them. And the Giants laid the ultimate egg. I've been very good about the Giants, and then they just totally burned me this past last night, I should say, because it's Tuesday here now.
Well, let me ask you a question. Since you've got kind of the inside to what's going on, since you were there during the letting Jason Garrett go, is it more of he was just doing a horrible job, or is he really the scapegoat so the coach keeps his job? You got to point your finger at somebody.
I mean, listen, yeah, this was scapegoat pointing time in general, but Jason Garrett, to me, stunk with the Cowboys as the head coach. He was given like 9 lives there. Every year they'd retain him, even though they were always underachieving. So now, obviously, the offensive coordinator job is a considerable step down from running a team. So you would think if, he was that highly thought of by the Cowboys that he could handle one side of the football, but he's been a disaster. And if there's one thing you could say about the Giants, for all the negative things you could say, they put a lot of weapons on that team.
Oh, yeah.
That team does not have an issue with weapons. So the fact that they can't score any points, something's got to give. Maybe it's Daniel Jones, but he's shown flashes. I think it was time for Garrett to go. I don't love Daniel Jones, but you got to score more than 10 points with that roster.
I'm not arguing with that. That. You're absolutely right. Let's just jump right into it, into our 5 questions for the week. You ready?
Certainly.
Surprise of the week, and maybe it's not a surprise to some people, but the Colts destroyed the heavy Super Bowl favorite Buffalo Bills 41-15. They started off the year 0-3 with losses to Seattle, Los Angeles, and Tennessee. So they had some quality losses there. But since they started off 0-3, they've gone 6-2. Should we consider them a contender? Are the Colts a dangerous team here in the back half of the season?
The thing about the Colts, I mean, listen, they're a weird team, but you got to start to look at it like they got a stud back. They got Wentz playing really well. I mean,
true.
Maybe the Colts are for real. An odd team. Like they had such it's a tale of 2 first halves of the season. They were a disaster for like 4 weeks, and now they've been unbeatable for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And there's not much more of an impressive win you can get than stomping the Bills. I mean, stomping them. So ceiling is looking a little higher than I thought it was. The Titans are still dangerous in that division because they still have a couple game lead, but the Titans have issues. Maybe the Colts can catch them. I don't know. I didn't think that was possible, but.
No, you're right. I mean, listen, we're looking at the Colts potentially with 9, maybe even 10 wins. I mean, their games, I mean, you're looking at some 50-50s. They've got Tampa Bay, then they've got Houston, they've got New England, Arizona, Las Vegas, and Jacksonville. So, I mean, they could win 4 games out of those 6. I think a couple of those are probably going to be losses.
Well, listen, if you can go beat the Bills, who's on your schedule that's unbeatable? I mean, and they didn't just beat the Bills. It makes me feel a little bit better about the Jets losing by 15 when people were destroying the Jets for that loss.
I know.
Jets still stink, but I'm just saying it made me feel a little better.
That's true. No, I understand. Well, that's good. Question number 2. Baker Mayfield. I mean, obviously this guy makes way too many commercials rather than good plays, but
my son loves his commercials, by the way. He just loves them.
But
they are good.
He was actually booed in the second half of the game of their monstrous 13-10 win over the winless Detroit. He was 15 for 29 for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. His passer rating was a 53. His QBR from scale of 0 to 100 was an 8. So far in 10 games, he's averaging 216 yards passing and 1 touchdown per game. All right. I know we've talked about the importance of quarterbacks, and this guy has done some good things in the past, but it feels like he's going in the wrong direction. And if I'm Cleveland, I'm thinking to myself, is this truly the guy that I want to pay $30 million to and keep him as our starting quarterback? Does this guy really have a future in Cleveland the way he's playing?
I mean, he could be playing himself out of it. They're not the Browns for nothing. That's what I'll say. You don't get a 50-year reputation as being a disaster because anything goes your way.
That's true.
And you don't
That's true.
also stink for 50 years because you have good luck. So like if you were talking about like the right way to do things from the time they drafted him, and you could squabble about who they drafted number one, and most people didn't think it was going to be him. But if you wanted to say, did they do everything right by the kid to get the most out of him? They did. I mean, they had a ton of draft capital. They used it on offense. They brought Beckham in. They did the anti-plan the Jets did with Darnold. They gave him as many weapons as possible. They did make the playoffs last year, so it's not like, they showed signs. But like everything in Cleveland, something's got to go wrong, right? Even when Cleveland gets something good happen, they win their first NBA title in a million years or ever, LeBron leaves anyway. So like the state of Cleveland and Cleveland sports, they just can't win. They just can't win.
No,
even the Cleveland Indians had to change their name to the Cleveland Galaxy of the Guardians. So I mean,
the interesting thing that I see about Baker Mayfield is when you have that good of a running game, it should open up your passing game. I mean, you should have a lot of one-on-one plays. If this guy was even halfway decent, he'd be throwing for 300 yards a game and multiple touchdowns with the weapons that he has and the running game. You have to respect the running game, and that's going to leave your wide receivers open.
It's really hard to you'd like to think if Cleveland was going to lose games, they'd lose shootouts, they'd lose different things. I mean, they're struggling to score. Yeah. He's been banged up and playing hurt, whatever, but
still, man, I don't know what kind
of. It doesn't look good in Cleveland. It
really doesn't.
Certainly, you'd be very leery to extend them. I mean, but starting over is daunting too, man. We throw starting over around too easy in like society with sports. Like, just start over again. Just start over again. It's not so easy.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I wouldn't want to be in that spot. Question number three. I happen to think that this team might even be a bigger surprise than the Colts, and that is the Patriots. I mean, who would have thought that 11 games into the season they would be in first place in the AFC East? They've won 5 in a row. This is how dominating they've been. In the last 5 games, they're outscoring their opponents, and I hope you're sitting down for this one, 175-50. All right, in their last 5. 5-0. They've in that time they've beaten Tennessee, Buffalo twice, and Indianapolis. Are they going to sustain this? Are they really, really that good? Is Bill Belichick just showing off his genius with utilizing this rookie quarterback that got passed over by so many teams, who is by far and away having the best season of all the rookie quarterbacks?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mac Jones knows what he is, right? He just knows what he is. He doesn't try to do more. He doesn't try to do less. He was brought into definitely the best coaching situation of any of the rookie quarterbacks. That goes without saying. Belichick's a Hall of Famer. You can't go to a better spot.
That's right.
The Patriots have a good defense. The Patriots know what they are. Their coaches never leave. They find the right pieces that fit what they want to do.
Yep.
And then they brought in, and I could see why Belichick and the organization was in love with Mac Jones. They truly see him as Brady 2.0, and that's not to be sacrilege and say he's going to be Brady, but they see him like Brady light, or they see the qualities and characteristics that made Brady successful. They see it in him.
Yeah.
And everything's worked so well for them right now. Am I going to be shocked if they beat the Bills out for the division? I'll still be surprised. I won't be shocked, though, because it's Brady and they don't beat themselves. Face the Patriots, you got to beat the Patriots. They don't beat themselves. And Mac Jones won't beat himself either.
It's true. It's true. But you know what? Let me correct myself. I mean, they are 7-4 right now. Their next 4 games, they play versus the Titans, then at the Bills, at the Colts, and then home versus the Bills. So they've got 4 very tough games coming up. And I guess this will show us what the Patriots are really, really made of. Because if we look at their 5-game winning streak, I mean, they beat the Jets, the Chargers, the Panthers, the Browns, and the Falcons. So they're not exactly beating any
right. They've done what you expect a Belichick team to do, beat the teams they're supposed to beat. I don't know if they have like a big signature win yet, do they? I haven't really looked.
Their other wins are they have 2 wins against the Jets. They also won against the Texans. They lost the opening day to the Dolphins. They lost to the Saints. They lost to the Bucks, and they lost to the Cowboys. So
I mean, they've had trouble when they've stepped
yeah.
up in competition.
Oh yeah. So these next 4 games are really going to determine what kind of team this really is.
Yeah, I would favor the Bills. Don't get me wrong. Like, I would favor the Bills to win the division still. They're just a better team all around with a better quarterback. But the fact that we're sitting here on Turkey Day, on Thanksgiving weekend, with the Pats a half a game ahead of the Bills for the division, like, are you kidding me?
Yep. It's
crazy.
It's pretty unbelievable. It's pretty unbelievable. So question number 4, Tennessee Titans, man. I still don't know what to make of these guys. You know, they've played tough games too, right? They've played the Colts and beat them twice. They've beat the Bills. They've destroyed the Chiefs. They beat the Rams. I mean, you know, and then if you look at their losses, you know, their opening loss of the season was the Cardinals, okay? And the beginning of the season I always kind of look at with a grain of salt. But since then they've lost to the Texans and the Jets. How do you be serious about a team that loses to 2 of the worst teams in football? They only beat the good teams. I mean, is that a good sign with them? You know, it looks like they're going to be pretty easily getting into the playoffs. So is that a good sign that they're only beating the good teams?
I mean, their identity is now taking a hit without their stud running back, right? So I think they're more vulnerable every week. They just don't have that tried and true horse they can rely on to get 26 to 30 touches a game, you know, and MVP caliber players off their team now. They're going to have more of an upswing and a downswing in performance week to week. The Jet game is explained away by the fact that, you know, they played without their 2 best receivers that day. The Jets were honed in on only stopping the run. They were extremely one-dimensional, and they didn't really stop it well, but they played a good game, the Jets, that week. They are a more one-dimensional team now, the Titans. Tannehill has to be effective throwing the football.
Yeah.
So I think they're vulnerable. Let's see what they do. They're vulnerable, though. I mean, they're not the favorite to come out of the AFC, despite the fact that they're the 1 seed right now. To me, and I don't know if we're going to touch on them, the Chiefs got their mojo back.
Yeah.
I mean, they beat the Cowboys doing it the reverse way you would expect with defense.
Yep.
They had just put up 1 million points on the Raiders the week before, so they showed you 2 different ways they could dominate a game. I mean, it feels like they're back.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does. And, you know, hopefully it's not too late. I mean, they have a losing record, but hopefully things will be good. Question number 5. It seems like the backup quarterback has become more and more and more important. You know, I mean, quarterbacks are getting injured all the time, you know, and you got guys like Tim Boyle, who played the game for Detroit. Okay. I can honestly say I've never heard of Tim Boyle before.
Me neither.
I couldn't even tell you what school he went to until I looked it up. He actually was a star at Eastern Kentucky, the powerhouse, the Eastern Kentucky Kentuckyers. I don't even know what they were.
I bet he went heads up with Mike White at Western Kentucky a few times.
That's a possibility. And then you've got in Baltimore, you had Tyler Huntley. Do you know what school he went to?
Did he go to UCLA?
No, but close. You got the U right. He went to Utah. So excellent guess. But I mean, it's like, who the heck are these guys? You know, in Baltimore, they didn't, you know, they were able to eke out a victory. But Tim Boyle, I mean, he only lost by 3 points. I mean, you know, so maybe there's some success with that. But then you got a guy like Colt McCoy. And granted, I truly think he's actually one of the better backups in the league.
Yeah,
he's been around for a long time. But he beat the Seahawks in Seattle. And my question to you, it's kind of a long-winded question, but it really has to do more with the Seahawks. And I was just trying to prove a point, but the Seahawks are 3-7. When the heck was the last year that you remember the Seahawks being 3-7? Are they just out? Are they going to throw in the towel the rest of the time? I mean, they are just playing horrific ball right now.
I like to believe so about the backup quarterbacks. I mean, it's a crapshoot, right? There's only a few really good backups. And then honestly, you see these crazy stories where these guys come out of nowhere and have flashes, and then people think they're good. But once you see them over a period of time, you're like, oh, okay, they're not very good. As it relates to the Seahawks, It's hard to imagine a world where like an MVP caliber quarterback is having a down year and they're not winning at all because they're a winning franchise.
Yeah,
I'd like
yeah.
to think it's the Jamal Adams effect, right? You know, wherever he goes, a team stinks. Um, he's big and brash and he's like so overhyped. It's just absurd. Like he's like a legend in his own mind. Um, you know, I do
It's
like to
true.
think it's a little bit of Jamal Adams effect. Also, I think it's fair. People in Seattle, I've heard this said before. This is what happens when you neglect the offensive line for 5 years
That's true.
and think Russell Wilson can just do everything on his own. So I think that's a part of it too. Like because he had so much success making up for a bad line, they just kept neglecting it, and
Yep.
eventually he gets a little older, maybe a half step slower, and he got hurt this year, and it's like it's not the same thing. And the wheels are clearly coming off the wagon there in
Oh yeah.
Seattle. I don't know
Oh
if
yeah.
it's a complete collapse, like where they're just going to not win anymore, because I think they got some wins on that schedule coming up, but they're not. They were supposed to be, competing for a division and a top four seed, and that ain't happening. So
No, 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 no. Now they're looking like a bottom four team.
right.
Um, good stuff. Good stuff. Let's go into Phil's game ball. There were some good performances this week. I happen to personally think that one really stood out, but one of the rules, basically the only rule that we have here is that the team had to win. So that's how I come up with this here. So number one, we've got our man Justin the Herbie Herbert out of the Don't Call Me San Diego Chargers, LA Chargers. He was 30 for 41, 382 yards and 3 touchdowns in a very incredible 41-37 victory over Pittsburgh. I don't know if you read anything about that game, but I think Pittsburgh had 10 points going into the fourth quarter and they scored 27. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Player number 2, running back, my man, Jonathan Taylor. Just when you think this guy can't be any better, 32 for 185 and 5 touchdowns scored. What a day, man. What a day for that guy.
JT in the house.
And then we've got another guy. Is it Justin Jefferson? 8 catches, 169 yards and 2 touchdowns in the Vikings 34-31 win over the Green Bay Packers. Who are you giving Phil's game ball to this week?
I'm going Taylor's very tempting. Herbert, Taylor, Taylor, Herbert, Herbert, Taylor, Taylor, Herbert. Sounds like it could have been a president. I'll go Taylor. He's been great.
Yeah, he's just
Herbert was really good too, but I'll go Taylor.
I think Jonathan Taylor is just showing us why he is, without Derrick Henry around, he's the best running back. Plain and simple. I mean, he's just, I mean, even with him around, I mean, this guy is out of control, ridiculous. So good stuff. Good stuff. Now, always, it's my favorite time of the show. Yeah, you're flexing, and thankfully there's no muscles there. You must just have beer muscles because your picks have gotten progressively worse over the past few weeks.
Trending. If I was a stock, I'd be trending down.
Oh, Phil, man,
Phil.
This
Bye. I'm coming back.
Come on. We'd like to buy this week. All right. So
back on the bus.
Hopefully you put some real time into this. You thought about it. We've got people that are depending on you. One guy is like, if Phil doesn't get it right, I don't think I can feed my family this week.
All right.
So no pressure. Come on. We need some big picks here, Phil. Come on.
No, I'm with you. So I'm going to start off with a Turkey Day game, but I got to say, I'm staying away from the Bears Lions because I'm not going to make the same mistake. I don't even know who the quarterback is on the Bears. It's tempting to take the Bears, right? Because the Lions are 0-9-1, but I don't have any faith in the Bears. So I'm not going to go down that road. The Raiders Cowboys have too many injuries to even know what's going to shake out. So I'm trying to be more mindful when we do these podcast picks where if there's a team with like a bunch of questionable guys, I got to stay away from those games because I don't get to make the pick close enough to game time to know what I'm picking.
It's true.
It leads me to the night game. After you've stuffed your belly and the tryptophan has set in and you're falling asleep on the couch. We got the best game, I think, of the night where you have a desperate Bills team. Not desperate, but a Bills team that's going the wrong way. Against a Saints team that I liked going into the year, but I liked them with Winston. I think you're seeing how big of a difference it is when Winston's off the team in terms of their consistency. They're not able to be consistent without him. So you got Buffalo traveling to the Superdome in New Orleans, probably not where they want to be on Thanksgiving, but against maybe my better judgment of picking a Thanksgiving Day game, I'm going to take Buffalo minus 4.5. They're I don't want to call them desperate, but I feel like they're the better team and they really need this game even more than the Saints. I think they want to show people they didn't fall off the wagon. They got New England now a half game ahead of them. And I think they need the game. So I'm going to take the better quarterback, clearly the better quarterback, the better team. And I'm going to lay the 4.5 against maybe my better judgment on a Thursday night. The next game, I'm going to go back to a team that was good to me last week. Almost a very similar spread, but now you don't have the big travel. Division rival. And I'm going to take the Steelers getting 4.5 over the Bengals. And I just look at this game as they're pretty even. I like both teams, and I'm just taking the 4.5. That's really it. I'm not going to overthink it. I think it's a 3-point game. And I'm going to take the 4.5 because the Steelers could easily win outright by 3. You know, it could be one of those 24-21 either way games to me.
I gotcha.
The Steelers. The next game this is not a team I've really picked all year long. And we just talked about how absolutely great this team is playing against the team I'm going to pick. So again, maybe a little dicey, but I think the Bucks on a slightly short week are just better than the Colts. But the Colts have been playing so well that you get a chance to get the Bucks and only give 2.5. So again, much better quarterback, much better overall team. I'd like to think the Bucks will render the Colts more one-dimensional and really gear up to stop Taylor. And I think if they can't, the Bucks are capable of winning a shootout. So I think with the lock, this is a little dicey because they're two really good teams. So you don't always love to pick the lock. But here's my angle on the lock. You got a team traveling from California to a dome stadium team traveling from California to a frigid Lambeau Field. I don't think Thanksgiving weekend anybody in LA wants to end up in Lambeau. That's just my thought. Like if you're looking at making holiday plans, you're not like, hey, babe, let's pack the kids. Let's get on that Southwestern flight, that Delta flight from Cali to Wisconsin. I don't think that's what you think. So I don't think the Rams want to be in this game. And although it's a marquee matchup and it's a test of possibly two big-time NFC, this could be the NFC title game preview. Rams going to Green Bay. But I don't like the Rams where it's a pick-em game with Rodgers at home in Lambeau. I'm never betting against Rodgers at home when I don't even have to lay points. He just has to win. Vegas is trying to tell me the Rams are better by the spread. I'm not buying that. I'll take the Packers. I'll take Lambeau. I'll take Rodgers in Lambeau. I'll take 30-degree weather and the home team that's used to it, and the raucous crowd that'll be there that night or that day. So, because that's the game of the week, by the way. That's the big Fox 4:30 kick. So
it is. Okay.
My lock will be the Packers, and I'm just betting on Rodgers and not having to cover any points and just win a game at home. I'll always take Rodgers at home. Always. So if you take a spread out of the equation, I'm just picking straight up. I'll always take Rodgers at home.
Listen, man, I like it.
The Bills on Turkey Day. I got the Steelers, the Bucks, the Packers. So my theme of the week, I think, is kind of leaning on good teams in general. I'm just leaning on 4 of the better teams in football.
Why not, right?
That's how I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to lean on the better teams.
All right, folks, you heard it here first. The man has spoken. He thinks he's going to do well. He thinks he's going 4-0 this week. We can only keep our fingers crossed and pray. Let's be honest.
Sure.
Let's move into a little college football. Now, why is it that they don't put out the rankings, the playoff rankings, until Tuesday night? That annoys me.
So they don't
just
put the
messing with
playoff
all of
rankings
us?
out till Tuesday, so these guys could probably stay an extra night in a beautiful hotel down in the old wherever they all meet and huddle up for 3 days. They get an extra day away from the family. They get to eat on the college football committee's dime. I have no idea. This should be done Monday.
It makes no sense, right?
I don't understand. You could even make a case it should be done Sunday.
I don't
Not
understand it.
Tuesday.
I really don't understand it. But let's talk about the existing top, let's say top 8 from last week.
Yeah.
Georgia continues its dominance. I mean, they are just looking like they are by far and away the best team in college football. Number 2, Bama. They only win by a touchdown over Arkansas, and they actually needed 559 yards passing out of Bryce Young just to beat Arkansas by 7 points. I mean, this is not the same Alabama defense that we're used to, which is unbelievable. What helped a little bit in the shakeup is that Oregon, the number 3 team, they didn't just lose; they got beat up badly. Okay, they lost 38-7 to number 23 Utah. So I think it's safe to say that Oregon is overrated and probably will no longer be in the hunt for the title. Ohio State has truly pulled a fill, except this time they actually showed muscles when they beat Michigan State 56-7. Michigan State was ranked number 7 at the time. And either it's a tremendous disparity between the rankings of 4 and 7, or Michigan State was just overranked. And I happen to think that the latter is probably the issue. Then you got the other teams. Everybody just keeps humming along, and I think these teams are really, they're showing, hey, you know what? It's the end of the season. We got to start kicking some ass. Cincinnati 48-14 over SMU. Michigan 59-18 over Maryland. Notre Dame 55-0 over Georgia Tech. This week we've got one big game on, and that's OSU and Michigan, and that should actually, the winner of that game should pick up a playoff spot, is my guess. I don't know.
Wait, hold on. We have two massive games. Then you have
there's another
Oklahoma,
massive
Oklahoma
game.
State.
Oh, Oklahoma State.
That's a massive game. No. Don't shake your head.
It is.
The winner of that game is in the top 6 next week in the rankings.
You think?
Yeah. Well, Oklahoma State's going to be 6 or 7 this week.
Yeah, that's true.
No, Oklahoma State controls their own. I don't want to say I don't want to say Oklahoma State in particular controls their own fate to a Final Four, but they're very close to controlling their own fate, because if, for instance, Georgia goes undefeated and eliminates Alabama, and Ohio State wins their last 2 games and is the number 2 seed, and Cincinnati wins out and is the number 3 seed, if that happens, which they would be, all of what I just said, they're all going to be favored, right? Georgia will be favored in their last 2 games. Ohio State will be favored in theirs. Cincinnati will be favored in theirs. So if we can agree those 3 teams totally control their own fate, then Oklahoma State controls their own fate to be number 4. If Oklahoma State wins their last 2 games, they're going to be 12-1, and they're going to be the 4 seed.
You think they leapfrog
Where
over
it
Notre
becomes
Dame?
tricky is if Georgia loses to Alabama.
Yeah.
If Alabama and Georgia make the Final Four, right, then it gets into a pissing contest with 13-0 Cincinnati, 12-1 Oklahoma State.
So where do you see the playoff committee rank this week? What do you see happening?
So Georgia's number 1, clearly.
Yeah.
Ohio State should now jump to 2 because
they should.
So Ohio State should jump to 2, and I've been very anti-Ohio State, but it's based on fact. They hadn't played anybody. They were being overhyped and overrated. They produced a massive win against Michigan State. They deserve the ball for that.
Yep.
What the negative to Ohio State's resume is now Oregon dropped a terrible game and got blown out to Utah.
Yep.
Oregon did give Ohio State their only loss. So Ohio State's loss to Oregon no longer looks as good as it once did, but I'm still going to move Ohio State to 2, but it's more on the backs of Alabama not looking as dominant.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So to me, if I was actually ranking it based on what I think is the most fair rankings today, purely the most fair rankings, it should be Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Cincinnati 3, Alabama 4. And then you could put Notre Dame, Michigan on the same line, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like I would make them 5A, 5B. I mean, you could go either way, and it don't matter because Michigan's going to get their chance to move up to 2 or go down to 10. Yeah. So either way. So that's Michigan's going to get their shot to prove they either belong or don't. So it doesn't matter where you put Michigan right now. And then, so I'll go Michigan 5, Notre Dame 6, Oklahoma State 7. I think for people that's watching the playoffs, there's only 7 teams that can make the playoff out of the Final Four. It's the 2 Oklahoma teams that still can.
Yep. Yep.
And it's Notre Dame, Alabama, Cincinnati, Georgia, Michigan, and Ohio State. Right? Is that 7 or is that 8?
That's 8.
All
That's
right.
8.
So those 8 teams those 8 teams are fighting for 4 spots.
Right. Right.
Ohio State, Michigan have to knock themselves, and one of them's out. So then it's down to 7. The loser of that game's out.
And then Oklahoma State, we're going to knock one of them out.
Knock themselves out.
So after this week, we should have 6. We should be down to 6.
That's what I meant to say. So you have 8 now when the committee ranks the teams today. You'll have 6 by Sunday. By Sunday, you'll be down to 6 teams fighting for 4 spots. If you get chaos in Championship Saturday on December 4th, if you get chaos, you could see so many different things happening because people aren't even accounting for what if Michigan actually beats Ohio State finally, but then Michigan loses in the Big Ten title game, which they're so capable of doing.
That's true.
Then the Big Ten's out. If something like that happens, it's a foregone conclusion the Big Ten's not only making the playoff, they're going to be the 2 seed. But if that happens, all bets are off. Now you just get pure chaos.
You're right. And we got to remember that Georgia and Alabama are going to play in the SEC championship, and chances are Georgia's going to win that game. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, but
it's not.
They're just playing so well.
No, listen, here's the thing I think everybody has to think about. Do we want to set a precedent? Because you're already hearing the murmurs. If Alabama drops a close game to Georgia, shouldn't they just make it and be the 4 seed?
Yeah.
That's such a terrible logic on so many levels. For one, why are we playing the games if Alabama just gets to make the playoff with 2 losses? Because the theory, because you'll hear Kirk Herbstreit and you'll hear all these guys say, the eye test says Alabama is one of the 4 best teams. Yeah, you know what even says it? They're ranked, they're 5-star recruits. Let's just look at the 5-star recruit rankings and make Alabama and Ohio State every year in the playoff. Why do the games even matter? It doesn't matter. Even if they lose 3 games, we know they're one of the best 4 teams. On any given week, Alabama could beat anybody. We know that.
Yeah.
Games have to matter. So Alabama should not be in the playoff with 2 losses. But the way that becomes less likely is if they finally drop them to 3 or 4 this week, right?
Yep.
Like, let's drop them. The other reason, and it's a Georgia-based reason, but it's also just a fairness reason. If Alabama loses, let's just say it's a thriller. Let's say Georgia beats Alabama. It won't be a high-scoring game, probably. Let's say Georgia beats Alabama 23-17 or 23-20. Good game. Alabama's in it the whole way. Matter of fact, let's even play it out. Alabama's got the lead most of the game. Georgia comes back and wins at the end, right? The ultimate thriller, Alabama lost a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
You're going to ask Georgia to have to beat them again 2 weeks later in a 1-4 matchup in a rematch from 2 weeks ago?
That's true.
First of all, from a TV perspective, not great. They don't love rematches. From a fairness perspective, Georgia, the 1 seed who's 13-0, has to go beat Alabama again just to get to the championship? That's not fair. So, like, under any circumstance, it really wouldn't be fair for Alabama with 2 losses to make it. Unless you're comparing Alabama and there's pure chaos, and you're comparing Alabama to 2-loss teams. If you want to say they're the best 2-loss team and you're only comparing 2-loss teams, fine, put them back in. But that's not going to be the case because that would then mean Notre Dame lost to Stanford. I don't think that's happening. That would mean Cincinnati's going to lose 2 games. They're going to lose their last 2. That's not going to happen.
No.
So, again, let's see it play out. It might just play out all chalk. Maybe Georgia, Ohio State, Cincinnati all win, right? And they're clearly 1, 2, 3, which would be great for Cincinnati making the playoff. They deserve it this year. Totally deserve it. And then the 4 seed is really, that's where it gets fun.
Yeah.
And let me ask you, who doesn't have a dog in the fight? Let's say Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State this week and then beats Baylor for the Big 12 title. 12-1 Oklahoma, 11-1 Notre Dame. I don't know if there's anybody else in the fight. Let's say between those 2 teams, who are you putting at 4?
No, you've got to go with Oklahoma just based on their strength of schedule. If they go out there and they can beat Oklahoma State and then Baylor, who are both top 12 teams, Notre Dame can't beat that. Notre Dame's strength of schedule is nowhere near that, and just their last 2 games to be able to do that is.
So if I would
huge.
tell you though that Notre Dame's strength of schedule is far superior to Oklahoma's right now on paper.
Right now, right now, but I'm talking about the end of the season. I'm talking about what's
Got it.
fresh in their minds.
So you're
You
not
know?
going to put, and that's fine.
Yeah.
By the way, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I actually agree with you. That's what will happen. The only thing I would say is it would go against the committee in terms of how they've usually do things, where Oklahoma's been bad all year
Yeah.
and won a whole bunch of games against bad teams close,
That's true.
lost to a 5-loss team, where Notre Dame's loss is to a team in the playoff.
Yeah.
So you could make a very valid argument that Notre Dame is ahead of them. But
You
I
can.
agree with you, they won't.
You can. It's the short-term memory thing. They're not gonna, and they can sit there and they can say they're gonna look at the whole body of work, but you know that they don't. They
I
look
agree
at the
with you. I
most
think they
recent
do
games.
have very recency bias.
Absolutely.
If you lose in September, they almost don't even count it anymore.
Yeah, it's true. They
The
really
way
don't.
they talk about
They really
September
don't.
losses as if they're the year before.
Doesn't even matter. Yeah, you lose your first 1 or 2 games.
But
it's
and this is
under.
my Notre Dame. This is my Notre Dame. What's the word? This is my my looking at things through the Notre Dame lens. They have such recency bias. They don't look at even losses in September, but yet Notre Dame's blowout losses in college football playoffs from years ago still held against them.
You're right. You're absolutely
It's
right.
like they don't even care about September losses, but Notre Dame got blown out to Clemson 3 years ago. Get them out of there.
If
I got to hear one more ESPN analyst be like, we don't need to see Notre Dame in the playoff. They lose to Alabama by 3 touchdowns. And I'm like, and who doesn't?
It's funny that you say that, though, because as much as I think the committee does everything they can to get Alabama in, I think they do as much as they possibly can to keep Notre Dame out. I don't think they, like you just said, I mean, they look at all their appearances and they do get blown out. I mean, that's their reputation. Notre Dame's reputation is they are an excellent regular season team and they just suck when it comes to the bowl games.
Yeah. I mean, listen, this isn't meant to be a defense of Notre Dame, because as a Notre Dame fan, it's very hard to stomach what happens in those big games, right? Like, you're living it as a fan.
Of course.
So for me as a fan, I can't defend those performances.
Of course.
What I can say is they've been to the playoff in this new playoff era twice. They lost to Alabama last year, who went on to beat Ohio State by a worse margin than they beat Notre Dame in the game. That's how good Alabama was. And we know how good they are, because Mac Jones is already a good NFL quarterback. And that was the least part people thought was good about Alabama last year.
Yeah.
And then they lost to Clemson with Trevor Lawrence, who went on to beat Alabama, or beat whoever they beat in the title game by a worse margin than they beat Notre Dame in the Final Four.
Yeah.
And that Clemson team was historically good with like 15 NFL draft picks.
Oh, they're crazy
So
good.
Notre Dame's bigger crime recently is losing to 2 all-time great teams. By less of a margin than the championship game was.
No,
so
I hear you.
I get it. They have a bad reputation in these games, but it's a little overstated of late, because they just did what everybody else did, which is not be able to match up with 2 historically great teams. Yeah. So it is what it is, but it's a ding on them. Oddly enough, though, Oklahoma never gets dinged for that same thing, and they get blown out in the playoffs all the time.
All the time.
They just score more than Notre Dame, but they lose
I don't know what it is.
30. They lose like 56-30, and people are like, well, they scored 30. Well, they gave up 700.
It's really odd, right?
Oklahoma gets that narrative where it's like, well,
yeah.
They lost to Alabama 63-29. That's not so bad. It's like, huh? Alabama scored 9 straight touchdowns.
Listen, it's embarrassing to be a Notre Dame fan. Let's just leave it at that and move on to our next topic here.
It's still the best team I root for, by the way.
Oh, hands down. I mean, hands down,
close.
Much better than every other
Every
team
time
combined.
Somebody in my family complains about Notre Dame, I'm like, guys, it's by far the best team we root for. By far.
That's right.
Do I have to remind you of that? Like, look at the hat I'm wearing.
You should be wearing where's your Notre Dame helmet? Do you still have that?
Yeah, man, I do.
You should wear that for the next podcast. So I wanted to ask you this because I read an article this morning. It was interesting. And it said that now CJ Stroud is the Heisman Trophy favorite. Okay. And I just wanted to ask you a question. I'm going to tell you his numbers versus Bryce Young. Okay. Which are very, very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But my question to you is going to be, what do each of these guys need to do to win the Heisman Trophy? Okay. CJ Stroud, here's his numbers. 246 for 346 for 3,468 yards, which is a 71.1 completion percentage, 36 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and he's only been sacked 9 times. All right. Then we got Bryce Young, 263 for 367 for 3,584 yards, 71.7% completion percentage, 38 touchdowns versus 3 interceptions, but he's been sacked 26 times.
Okay.
So on the surface, to me, it's neck and neck. You can definitely see that CJ Stroud, the fact that he's only gotten sacked 9 times, and I kind of put that in there just to show you, I thought that was the biggest disparity. Obviously, it goes to show you that he's not dealing with as much pressure as Bryce Young is right now. So, here we are, 2 guys, they're neck and neck. They're really like identical stats. What do these guys have to do, each of them, to overtake the other and win the Heisman Trophy?
Well, can I ask a question I don't know the answer to?
Wait, what?
I said, can I ask a question I don't know the answer to?
No, I'm saying I've never heard you say that before.
I know. It's shocking.
Yeah, what's your question?
Well, my question would relate to my prediction.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
the
yeah.
Heisman voting over before the SEC title game?
I want to say it is.
I think it is. That's why
I
I'm
want to
saying
say it. I think it's December. It's December 5th.
But so I'm gonna guess that a preponderance of the votes will be in before it. But that's my one caveat, because if it comes down to who's got one more chance to blow the committee or the voters away, it's Stroud against Michigan.
It's the 9th. It's the 9th.
The voting is the 9th, or the
voting is the ballots are due by the 9th. That's the deadline.
Okay, so then the SEC title game counts. Okay,
so then the SEC title game
he gets
count.
a chance to face Georgia's defense,
right?
And okay, so now
right.
I'll say Alabama quarterback has the best chance to win it, because there'll be no more impressive of a feat than dominating Georgia and that defense if he does.
Yep.
Right. So in terms of like last chance to blow somebody away, Stroud has it this week against Michigan, but then Bryant, is that his last name?
Who?
The quarterback on Alabama? I even forget.
No, Bryce Young.
Bryce Young gets a chance to blow away and set the final numbers for the Georgia game in a massive audience, SEC title against the best defense in college football.
Yeah.
I'm going to say the Ohio State quarterback wins the Heisman, simply because I think he'll have a more likely chance to bust up Michigan and put up monster numbers, and then do it in the Big Ten title against probably Wisconsin, who's good, or somebody like that. Like, he'll have a chance to do another 800 yards and 8 to 10 touchdowns potentially.
Yeah.
Where I don't think Alabama's offensive line is going to be good enough against Georgia to have that kid have a monster game.
Yeah.
I think even if Alabama wins, it'll be like a low-scoring game. So I think the Ohio State quarterback is borderline going to run away with this thing now.
You think he's in a better position?
Ohio State's receivers are so much better than Big Ten corners, right? It's the same thing we talk about every year. Why do Ohio State quarterbacks stink in the NFL? Yeah. You're looking at the reason again this year. Have you ever seen footage of how open these receivers are on every play?
Yeah.
Every touchdown that kid threw Saturday, there was guys running open 20 yards past safety.
It's true.
It's not hard to hit those guys. And they got 3 NFL receivers on that team, Ohio State, like 3 first-round NFL receivers.
True. It's true.
I like the kid on Ohio State. The quarterback's good, but I don't know what that translates to in the NFL. You don't throw in those windows in the NFL. But he's good enough to win the Heisman. He's going to win the Heisman. So,
well, I think the interesting thing with these two guys is it's also both their first year starting, which I think is interesting. They both played last year, or they were both on the team last year, and I think Bryce Young had a little bit of passing attempts, but I don't think Stroud played at all last year. I don't think he had any attempts. So for these guys to come out, basically, and with the rule, they're both freshmen. They're both still freshmen with that stupid rule.
And it's a little tiresome, but we're getting to a point now with the haves and have-nots that are college football, that the quarterback, insert name, at Alabama and Ohio State are immediately top 5 Heisman candidates.
It's true.
It doesn't matter who they are, because the weapons they have are far superior to typically what they face. On a normal year, Alabama's offensive line is littered with NFL first-round picks. And so both of those 2 players, whoever they are almost always top 5 Heisman Trophy candidates.
It's true. It's true. Well, it's interesting. Last topic on college football. University of Florida fired head coach Dan Mullen, and I've followed Florida for like 20 some years. And my question is this: I just want to go through. I mean, they wanted this guy so badly. They basically he was their man, and that was it. So, when I look back at what he's done with the program, his first year he was 10-3 and went 5-3 in the division, second place in their division. 2019 he was 11-2, 6-2 overall in the SEC, second in the division. Last year they went 8-4, including 8-2 in the SEC, which put them in first place, and they almost beat Alabama. I think they only lost by 7 points in the SEC championship. And then this year they're 5-6, 2-6 in the SEC, sixth place in their division, and he gets fired. So my question is, is it fair when you look at this guy? I mean, has he achieved the kind of success that you want him to achieve? No, but he has been successful. And then this year he has a lousy year. I mean, is that enough just to go and say, okay, well, we're a big program. You've had 3 decent years, decent/good years, and now you're having a crappy year, so you're out of here.
They have a little bit, and I don't compare these two teams in terms of like historic resumes or whatever, but Florida's got a little of the Notre Dame problem, in that they had Spurrier, right? They had a brief stint with Urban Meyer.
Yep.
And they mostly, in between both of those things, have fired a bunch of coaches because they
Yep.
never seem to think they're any good.
That's right. That's right.
It's not an easy job. You're in a great recruiting state, but unfortunately, the top 10 or 12 teams litter the state, picking out the best players. You're competing with everyone. You got 2 other big schools in the state.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough job. And I only compare them to Notre Dame because for the longest time, I felt like the expectations didn't meet reality. Like Florida thinks they should win national titles because Urban Meyer won a few, right? But in reality, that was like the perfect storm that came together.
Yeah.
A top, really great coach with a couple of great recruiting cycles.
Yep.
An insanely gutty quarterback that you could say whatever you want about Tebow, but in college he was great. And they won a couple rings, but they never won a ring with Spurrier, right? Or am I wrong about that?
No, they did. They definitely did.
They won one with Spurrier?
Yep.
They might have won one. So they had a nice run with Spurrier, then they had a bunch of gap, then they had Urban, and now they've had a gap. But I just think their expectations are really, really high. Tough conference, a lot of issues there.
Big pressure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. So when I think of the Florida Gators, I don't think of it as a top 5 or 7 coaching destination. I think of it just below that.
Okay.
Right, like somewhere in the 8 to 14 range, right? Like I think there's 5 or 6 that people leave other big jobs to go to, right? Like Alabama is obviously now become the number 1 place, right?
Oh, yeah.
Texas is still in the top 5. Michigan and Ohio State, Notre Dame. There's 5 or 6 places. USC is still ahead of Florida in terms of cachet and like long-term branding and what have you.
Yeah.
So there's, Oklahoma's probably a peg ahead of Florida, but it's close. There's 7 or 8 places. After that, Florida can lay claim to any spot. But you could also make the case they're not the number 1 destination in their own state.
That's true.
For a long time, Florida State ruled the state. For a long time, Miami ruled the state.
That's right.
And for a smaller period of time, Florida ruled the state.
Yeah.
So, and now Georgia being right in their back door doesn't help them in their backyard. Like Georgia owns more of the North Florida recruiting than Florida does. Tough place, man. It's tough. Like if their expectation is win 11 games and an SEC title or bust, they're going to be firing a lot of coaches.
That's exactly right.
I don't think Mullen is great, but I think Mullen will be sought after now.
There's no doubt.
Highly sought after, and he'll probably go to the NFL, by the way.
You think so?
I think he's more of an NFL coach.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
You know what his track record? You know what his best resume thing is? Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Michigan State. Yeah.
No, Mississippi State.
I mean, I'm sorry.
That's his big claim to fame. I mean, making Dak into a great quarterback.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think he's more of an NFL guy. I think Florida may have made a mistake here.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I don't know who's in line for that job, but yeah, since Urban left, it's been kind of a revolving door.
Yeah,
So we'll see. Even before him, you have so much success with Spurrier, and then you bring in a whole bunch of guys. I mean, they had Charlie Weiss, for God's sakes, who was their coach one year.
It definitely does seem, and this you see get coaches fired in the NFL and in college. It does seem like he lost the players a little though, because the wheels really fell off the wet. Like they almost lost to Sanford and Sons,
and then they lost.
That's
last
hard
week
to do.
And then they lost to Missouri. I mean, really? Missouri has a football team?
I could live with Missouri, but Sanford and Sons put 50 on them.
Yeah,
that's
seriously.
Tough.
That was pretty. That's
pretty
a
crazy. Hard one to defend when you get in there with the AD and he goes, "Hey, what happened last night?" There's not one kid on Sanford that could get into Florida and play football. How'd you give up 50?
Seriously, I mean, the Florida usually can recruit pretty well also, and the week before Dan Mullen was fired, they lost 3 of their recruits coming in next season, and then once he was fired, they lost 2 more. So
now the recruiting is going to drop off. They need to. This is
absolutely.
tough. When you decide to fire a coach, you do know that you're probably punting on the next year or 2 of recruiting.
Yep.
So it's a 4-year it's a 4-year rebuild, or it's like a 4-year problem when you fire a guy because you lose a bunch of the high recruits. The following year is a little dicey, and then the guy needs a year or 2 of his own guys to change that. So it's like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
Unless you're 3 or 4 of the top, like Texas is going to get high recruits, whatever. There's a few, but
yeah. I want to talk just a little college basketball before we move on, just really, really quickly. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this, right? So Villanova started off the season as number 4. Already they've lost to number 2 UCLA by 9 points, and they lost to number 6 Purdue by 6 points, and they're currently ranked number 7. What is your viewpoint on that? I mean, you're talking about 2 top teams that they lost to, so they're actually 3-2. And they're actually currently ranked number 7 overall, even with 2 losses. So is that warranted because their 2 losses were to teams that are basically top 5 teams?
And I think Joe Lunardi has them as a 1 seed in his absurdly, ridiculously early bracket
already, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, is this case in point like we normally say, where this is the reason that you don't have rankings so early in the season?
100%. But college basketball is a little bit different than college football, just because there is 30 plus games played. And an early loss is literally nobody even, who cares? Like, it's not a big deal, but it could all be undone with just the rankings that start a month from now. We could weed through all this garbage, right? Because Villanova probably is a top 10 team. I don't know. I'm not going to sit there and tell you I know anything about Villanova basketball right now. They're a good team. They have a great coach. But what I can say is they don't deserve to be ranked 4th or 5th or 6th or 7th with 3-2 record. Not right now.
I mean, there's plenty of undefeated teams out there.
We could always put them back there if they're 14-4 in a month.
I mean, they have 2 losses. I mean, I don't care who they lost to. They've lost 2 games. And I mean, again,
the games are still supposed to matter. They don't matter as much in college basketball as college football, but the games are still supposed to matter. If you go, forget those games, who cares? They're still one of the best 10 teams. Why are we playing the games?
Yeah, you're right. And that argument keeps holding true. It's interesting. Now, the one thing that I can say about Nova's schedule is I mean, it's great that they're actually scheduling tough games in the beginning of the season. I mean, there's so many of these teams that just schedule the cupcakes all the time, and even tonight, number 1 Zags take on number 2 UCLA. I mean, this is the 6th game of the season for each of these teams. I mean, that's pretty awesome to see a 1 and a 2. And these guys, let's be honest, these guys are legitimately 1 and 2. I mean, when you see UCLA, what they did last year and what Gonzaga did last year, and Gonzaga brings back a couple of their stud players. They have the number 1 high school recruit in the country that went there. And UCLA is bringing back all of their starters from last season. So you're talking about the 2 best teams in the country, potentially. So this is an exciting matchup tonight that I think.
And by the way, for Gonzaga, who's always willing to play anybody, right? That they definitely are. I know they play no one in conference, so they make sure they load up out of conference. But in the same week they play UCLA, they also play Duke this week.
That's true. Wow.
Later in the week they play Duke. So
Duke's got a solid team, but again,
I'm just saying, in any given week where Gonzaga plays UCLA and Duke in the same week, that's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, let's just run through a couple quick hits here. I just want to get your thoughts on this. Baseball named their MVPs: Ohtani and Harper. Yes or no?
Immediately thought about you and laughed a little in my heart that you would be angry about Ohtani winning, and he won in the most unanimous landslide of all time.
I know, and I'm still angry about it because he got it. He got it at the middle of the season. He already had the award.
Ohtani, I agree with, but I think it should have been closer. I think Guerrero was slighted. Harper, all right.
And when I look at his season was good all around.
Yeah.
It was good all around.
Who was better? So I guess if you make the argument, like, okay, I mean, you could always put Freeman in there, but he didn't have the Freeman type of
no.
You can't count the playoffs, right? So it's like it was regular season award. So I'm okay with Harper winning it. I don't love it, but all right.
I mean, I would have thought. I mean, I thought Tatis had a better season personally, but
Tatis missed some games, but yeah, he was electric. Yeah. You know what? I would have been fine with Tatis winning.
Yeah, but what difference does it make now? Because Wander Franco only played 70 games and he was second place in the AL Rookie of the Year. So anyway, so that was good. Comeback Player of the Year, Mancini and Posey. I don't think anybody was surprised that Trey Mancini. I mean, just the story of the year. It comes back from stage 4 colon cancer and actually has a really good year. Bunch of other things that I just wanted to talk about. One is Antonio Brown allegedly has a fake vaccination card. When you hear that, are you like, yeah, that makes sense, or can you just not believe it?
Totally makes sense.
He's just that guy. The only reason that he's even behaving himself is probably because he's playing with Tom Brady.
He seems like the kind of guy that has $9 million in his bank account selling $20 COVID vaccine fake IDs out of his souped up truck.
I can see that. How do you feel about Ruggs being placed under house arrest after he was driving 150 and killed somebody?
No bueno.
That's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, why? Because he's famous? Because he's a football player? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. A bit of some sad news. Doug Jones, the 5-time All-Star, died at age 57 of COVID. COVID related, it said. It was COVID related. So
does that mean he had stage 4 cancer and COVID?
Probably had something and COVID. Yeah, I don't know. That's just what it says. I haven't read more about that, but 57 is definitely far too young to die. And then Bill Verdon, who I just got back in the mail autographed 2 days ago. I just want you to know that he died at age 90. And this is a guy that had a 14-year career as a player. And then he was a manager. He was the AL Manager of the Year in 1974 for the Yankees, and he was the NL Manager of the Year in 1980 for the Houston Astros. So,
glad you didn't ask me what sport he played.
Yeah, I know, right? The most impressive thing about him is that he and his wife were married for 70 years. Okay, my wife would never want to be married to me for 70 years. Just saying. Couple other things that I wanted to just mention really quick. Taysom Hill. Okay. I know there's a big thing about him. I don't understand what it is, but they gave him a 4-year, $40 million contract, $22 million guaranteed. And if he becomes their starting quarterback, it can be worth $95 million.
Yeah. Newsflash to Taysom Hill and his agent. You're not going to be.
Newsflash to the Saints. What the hell are you thinking?
It's like when Cam Newton signed his contract and they were giving him $4 million in bonuses if he wins the Super Bowl and the MVP of the Super Bowl. It's like, buddy, why are we wasting the ink on the paper?
Exactly.
You're not winning the Super Bowl and you're not going to be the MVP in the Super Bowl.
Now, one other thing when it comes to signing contracts, Wander Franco, the runner-up to the Rookie of the Year. I think is he still 20 or maybe he's 21 now? Well, they've got control of him for what, 6 years, 7 years, something like that.
5 or 6, yeah.
Right. So it's interesting that ahead of time, he just signed a 12-year, $223 million contract. So they have him under control. Basically, he could be making $500,000 for the next 3 or 4 years, and then it goes up from there. So,
but Tampa knows they'll never be able to pay him the $35 or $40 million a year he'll get in the last 5 or 6 years. So they're willing to spread it out over 12. It's a good deal for both teams, both parties.
In a sense, it really is. But the only thing is, they're also banking on the fact that he's going to be a stud. And you
They gave him the Tatis. It's like the Tatis deal, like
yeah,
even less money, but
yeah.
like that. But you know what? I think that's such great forward thinking. Like,
It is if it pans out, but you got to remember the Phillies, they gave I think it was a 7-year, $50 million contract to a second baseman 2 years ago that had never even played in the major leagues. And then he
yeah,
finally gets up to the major leagues and he's terrible and he gets sent back down. So they're paying this guy $7 million a year. So, and I'm not saying this guy's going to be a flop. Obviously he's the number one minor league player for 2 years in a row.
yeah.
And he comes up to the majors and he plays really, really well. So, I mean, this guy is good, but it's high risk, high reward. That's what it
I
comes down
think
to.
yeah. So it's in the full disclosure. Like you have to truly be in love with the player. He's got to already show you in a short period of time incredible high-end results, which Tatis and Franco have done for their teams.
Yeah.
And so, like, I get why both teams decided to give mega deals to these guys. But yeah, is over 12 years, is some of that not going to look great? I mean, sure, Franco's going to hit some slumps, different things are going to happen. But I think for a small market team like Tampa to have fixed costs over the next 12 years and like have a great, potentially homegrown player, that's what you want to see with small market teams. If they don't take a shot and do that, then they're just going to have the inevitable 5 years and he's going to leave.
Yeah.
So it's worth the risk to me if you're Tampa. If you're a big market team, maybe not worth the risk because you could pay the guy if you have to, if he turns out to be great. So
That's
why
true.
pay him all this money? But Tampa, I get it. I think
That's
it's
true.
a no-brainer for Tampa to do it. They
Yeah.
need to
Well,
finally keep some of their guys. Everybody in Tampa leaves as soon as they hit free agency.
yeah. Well, listen, maybe like you said, it makes sense to both parties, especially if he's a good player. If he ends up being as great as they think he's going to be, I
Well, in
mean, you
12
can't go
years,
wrong.
200
You can't go
and
wrong.
I mean, you got
23.
to realize though, great players now are making 35 million a year.
Yeah, that's eight. That's like 18.5 million per
Right.
year.
So, but in 5 years, when he finally hits free agency, what will great players make if he is great? 45?
Yeah,
That deal's a bargain.
50 maybe. It
That deal's a bargain in the last 7 years.
it should be. It should be.
I'm just
Yes,
saying it
it
should
should
be
be.
if
It
he's
should
good.
be. Yes.
If
The way
he's
that they
not
have
good,
it.
if he's not good, the deal's a disaster no matter what.
Right.
So
Exactly. And you can probably, not only that, they can always trade him. That contract is still manageable. 18.5 million. It's still manageable. So
it's very manageable.
yeah. So he can be traded if you find that you don't have the money for it. Last thing that I wanted to mention before we get out of here, I read that 2025 Apple is targeting a launch of their first venture into the auto industry, and the car is going to be self-driving. It's going to be self-driving so much that it actually doesn't even have a steering wheel.
That's amazing.
Does that make you a little nervous?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. You know what? That's one of those things where I'm like, all right, in 3 years after people have proof of concept, I will think about it.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? I was reading that too, and I'm like, I like the whole self-driving car thing, but you know what? Being at work and seeing how my internet goes down a lot, and being at home and the internet is a little sketchy. Even on our call today, the internet was a little sketchy.
Yeah.
I'd want a steering wheel there.
Well, here's the thing. I've driven in a car that if you've driven in cars that simply adjust and drive themselves when you go a little to the left or right and they bring you back, like those safety control, I can't even stand that.
I know.
Because you feel like helpless for a second. The thing just guides the car back. You're like, no. I knew what I was doing. I'm okay.
That's right. I'm not sleeping. I'm awake.
I'm good. I don't need you to take control because I moved 1 foot left and you don't think it was appropriate.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I'm not a fan of it. I'm not going to go have my lunch in the back seat while Apple Car drives me around.
Apple Car. Oh man. Well, we'll see. But anyway, happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Great show as always. And like I always say, listen to us, watch us. If you like what you see, tell your friends. If you don't like what you see, tell your enemies, tell your neighbors, tell everybody. Let's have a good time. Phil's got some great picks, man. He's guaranteeing a 4-0. That is awful. That is awful. Damn. He's guaranteeing to go 4-0 this week. So bet your house, bet your life insurance money, bet your retirement. The man is on fire. He's feeling good about himself after he fired poor Jason Garrett earlier this morning, and now he thinks he's a big shot head honcho. But let's get out there. Let's all have some fun. Have a great holiday weekend with your families. Don't eat too much turkey. But I hope you guys do exactly what Phil and I are going to be doing on Thanksgiving, which is eating and watching. That's
Eating,
all.
watching. You have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving to the Michael family.
Hey, you do the same, man. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time with your family and at your dad's. And we'll look forward to talking again next week.
See you guys.